My professor said I would never graduate, and he said it clearly enough for the entire engineering class to hear, and it was sophomore year, and I had just failed my first major exam badly enough to feel embarrassed when he returned the papers and paused at my desk, looking at my score and announcing that some students are simply not cut out for this major, and a few classmates laughed, and that kind of public doubt can either define you or refine you, and for a moment I felt small, like maybe he was right, maybe I did not belong in a room full of confident problem solvers who seemed to understand concepts instantly while I struggled to connect equations to logic. And instead of defending myself, I sat there replaying his words in my head, wondering if this was the moment my path quietly ended. But later that afternoon, when the embarrassment faded into something sharper, I realized quitting would prove him correct, and arguing would prove nothing. So I scheduled office hours, because I understood something important. Criticism feels personal, but improvement is mechanical. And when I showed up at his office, he looked mildly surprised, like he did not expect follow-through. And I asked him to explain every mistake, not just what was wrong, but why it was wrong, and what assumption led me there. And for 2 hours, I listened and wrote down everything, without ego, without excuses, without trying to protect my pride, because I understood that pride is expensive and clarity is profitable. And when I left that office, I did not feel confident yet, but I felt informed, and that was enough to start. And that night, I rebuilt my entire study system from scratch. Daily timed problem sets, weekly cumulative reviews, rewriting lecture notes in my own words, explaining formulas out loud as if teaching an imaginary classroom, and recording myself to catch hesitation and mistake. And every mistake became data instead of shame, and slowly patterns emerged. Concepts that once looked intimidating started to feel structured and predictable. And when the second exam arrived, I was not fearless, but I was prepared. And preparation changes posture, it changes breathing, it changes the way you read a question. And when the grades were returned, I ranked in the top 5. And the professor handed back my paper without commentary, but there was a pause, just long enough to signal recognition. And that small shift mattered, because improvement is rarely announced loudly, it is acknowledged subtly. And instead of celebrating, I doubled down, refining weak areas, reviewing advanced problems, studying beyond the syllabus, because I no longer wanted to pass, I wanted to master. And by finals, I earned the highest score in the course, not because I suddenly became gifted, but because I became consistent. And at graduation, when departmental honors were announced, he was the one reading the names, and when he reached mine, he paused slightly and added that I was one of the most improved students he had taught. And after the ceremony, he approached me privately and admitted he had been hard on me. And I told him he had been honest, because what felt like humiliation had become instruction, and what sounded like doubt had become direction. And that entire journey taught me something deeper than engineering principles. It taught me that intelligence is not fixed, confidence is not required to begin, and criticism, when filtered through discipline, becomes fuel. And the difference between those who permanently fail and those who transform is rarely talent. It is response to pressure. It is the decision to treat embarrassment as feedback instead of identity, because you do not silence doubt by arguing with it. You do not defeat criticism by resenting it. You silence doubt by building competence so undeniable that even the person who doubted you must eventually acknowledge it. And when they do, the victory feels quiet, not explosive, not dramatic, but stable, because the real achievement was never proving him wrong. It was proving to myself that growth is always a choice made after discomfort.